Hi, I'm here.
Here you are. I am, of course, a bit discombobulated because we went to look at the
Well,
eclipse.
I did too. I was down there and I was like, "Oh my God, I gotta hurry up and get back upstairs." But I saw enough. I didn't have glasses, so I couldn't look at it.
Well, we had two glasses between four of us, and we saw it just enough so that before the clouds moved over. So it was really nice. I think I just lost your audio.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Okay, good. I almost lost. I forgot to put myself on Do Not Disturb, so we won't get buzzed in the middle of the call.
Well, we're 2 minutes away. I know there are some people who've joined already because they're so excited to because of all the wisdom in this book.
My goodness. Look at all those books you have behind there. Oh my Lord.
I was like, what is the appropriate backdrop for me to have? It's not yet fully furnished, and it's not my office. So I grabbed some books because that's what we do. We're book people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's very exciting to be able to talk to you. And I jotted down a few notes on my train ride. Um, I think there's one phrase that's going to make you laugh, but I have a point. So
Okay. Okay. Well, we will. I've got it, and I'm gonna. It's so funny. I feel like what a day. I mean, we're here in New York, on the eve of publication of my book, and we have an eclipse. I mean, could we ask for a more auspicious beginning to this?
it's meant to be. There's a lot of things going on, and certainly that's one of them. And the eclipse is it's such a it's such an awe-inspiring thing that everyone can kind of not think about anything else and just look at it. And it was funny, we were for those of you who are tuning in, I'm in New York and Sharon is in New York. We're in different places in New York, but we both actually live in Washington, D.C. So we are here for some events to launch this exciting book, but some of us went to this street corner at Columbus Circle, and when people sort of put their glasses on and saw things, because you're like, oh, nothing's happening and it's still bright and whatever, and then you put the glasses on and everyone is like, whoa. And it was really a very nice collective thing to do. We don't do too much of that these
That's true.
days.
And you can only imagine the scene here in Times Square. Uh, let's just say it was a little interesting. A little interesting.
Oh, the thing I was struck by the sense of community, and community is one of the things that you do talk about in your book. So we will get to that later.
Okay.
Get going because we are now officially at 4:01 Eastern time, and people are joining us. So welcome to Crown Publishing's Instagram Live with our wonderful author, Dr. Sharon Malone, who publishes tomorrow this wonderful book, Grown Woman Talk. And it is for every grown woman in your life, including yourself. And we all have a definition of grown woman. I think we know what we mean individually by grown woman. And I just want to say, for all of the grown women joining us, a shout out to the men, led by, Sharon does not know this, by her very own husband, because yesterday he was saying to me that he had, of course, read the book, and that the first third and the last third had a lot of things that were applicable to all of us. And then we get into some nitty gritty about, women's issues, but there's a lot of advice here that is applicable to anyone who is dealing with the healthcare system and anyone who is trying to figure out what their life is going to be like and how to make it as optimally healthy as possible. And that is what we set out to do with this book. This is a fun thing that Crown is now doing, actually getting their authors to have a conversation with their editors. I don't know whether she's going to raise some things that didn't get raised while we were editing. Almost every author has a story about what they had to cut out, but that's okay. So welcome, Dr. Sharon Malone.
Well, thank you very much, Madalika. And by the way, I just had the best editor because you just let me run with it because it's a crazy idea, but you were like, okay, okay, I see that.
Well, I think one of the things you're referring to, and I'm going to start with this because we're going to talk about some heavy stuff because health and health issues are heavy. But one of the things, of the many things that I think will delight readers in this book, is Sharon, when we first started talking, she revealed that she loves music, and in another life, she might have been a DJ instead of a renowned OBGYN. And she thinks there is a song for absolutely everything in life. So that's what we have in this book. We have a playlist every chapter, regardless of what you're dealing with: brain health, fibroids, family issues. Peppered throughout are little musical notes with a song reference, and you have the full playlist in the back. And you can go to Spotify, you can go to Apple Music, you can find and Sharon's website, you can find the playlist there. And it's really, really fun. So there, I wanted to make sure we got that
Yes.
in, Sharon.
Yes, that's an important piece of it because, I think when you're talking about really heavy topics, sometimes you gotta leaven it a little bit. You gotta make it a little lighter. And I hope that if anyone feels any kind of way, just know you can always step away and go listen to a little music and come back and meet me in the next chapter.
Exactly. And so, not only Dr. Sharon, but DJ Sharon Mason. Um, so I'm going to start with the beginning because I think this is one that's applicable to all of us. Um, it's about your family history. And let us, for the record, stipulate my words: the American healthcare system is broken. It's broken in a pretty profound way, I think, for most of us. It's very broken for people with lack of access, and it doesn't work that great for even those of us with access. And so, what this book sets out to do is to make you take control. You can't change things overnight, and you can't sit around waiting for it to change. But what can you take control of as a patient and as an advocate for yourself? And you talk about family history, and that seems kind of obvious, right? But actually, it's a really fraught topic. Why is family history so fraught for us as conversationalists?
You know what? I think that there is this perception that health matters are private. And there is so much shame, particularly when it comes to women's health issues. I mean, we have this notion about women and our female parts as somehow being shameful and dirty, and you don't talk about that because we don't. Our parents, our mothers have never really talked to us really about the things beyond puberty. And there's a lot that will befall us. And I think that people are really embarrassed about health things as if it's somehow their fault that illnesses and certain conditions befall them. And so there's that. I think so. You've got the shame, you've got the privacy issues, and people feeling as if it's not okay to talk about things. But for the younger women out here who might be listening, it's hard to believe, but we didn't talk about breast cancer before really Betty Ford. All it takes to get you to bring something into light is to have someone talk about it. And once you say it and it's out there in the universe, it becomes, it takes away the stigma. And that's what I want to do for all of the conditions that affect us. And when I say family history, tell you why that's important. Not because your family history dooms you to anything. Your family history is just an alert. It tells you what you may be predisposed to, not necessarily what you will have. But knowing that and knowing what things that have been in your family for whatever reason, and genetics is probably the least amongst the reasons why you may be predisposed to things, it helps you change your behavior. And that's why it's important, because if you see a sign out there that says bridge out ahead and you're driving, you don't put your foot on the gas and keep going there. It gives you an opportunity to course correct.
Right.
You slow up, you turn the car around, and that's why your family history is important. You know what things to watch out for.
And I think that's a really important part, because I think some people just sort of feel like, oh, well, I don't want to know, right?
Right,
Whatever happen is going to happen.
right,
And I think we have this sense of as a family, all our genes get carried all the way through, and they're going to act in the same way for all of us. And particularly for, we live in a time in human history where we can find out an awful lot
right.
that assuage some of those concerns.
Right. All you find out are what your predilections are, not certainty. Genes are nowhere near certain. If even with identical twins raised in different environments, can have very different outcomes depending upon lifestyle behaviors and where they are. So I want to sort of dispel that notion that just because things run in your family, that's your fate as well. No, that's your warning sign that it's time for you to do something differently with your health.
And
Uh,
I mean, it's a real tough thing to talk about across generations.
mhm.
You and I both have adult daughters, and there are periods in their life where the idea of talking to their mom about any of this stuff was just couldn't compute.
Right.
Um, but how would you advise people to make it more of a familial discussion? So that everyone is a little aware. Who was the smoker? Who
Yeah.
tended to drink?
Yeah.
We didn't talk about cancer before. How would we even know if there was cancer in our family? So what are some sort of tactics you would suggest?
I think it comes from love and not from prying, because you explain to them, it's like, hey, mom, I am not being nosy. I don't really, I'm not trying to get all in your business, but you are. Do this. If you don't say this, if you don't want to do this for me, please do this for my children, your grandchildren, such that they will know what their family history is. And that's really important. And when you come at it, sometimes you have to come at it sideways to get the information that you want. And sometimes you'll be surprised how much they don't even know,
Right.
because, with my parents were much older, and all I know is that my grandmothers died young. Now, what they died of, I have no idea. And I don't think that my parents did either, because there was a certain time where your diagnosis was, I don't know, she got sick and died, or you died of old age, that was a diagnosis. But that's all we know. And so what I'm saying is that even if you don't know your family history, or you can't access your family history, then do a better job of communicating yours to the next generation, such that this won't perpetuate itself as we go on.
Right. And I think that, making those notes, if someone says something in an offhand way, or I love there's something that Sharon writes about, if you see an old family photograph,
Yeah.
tell from that, you know, um, does someone, is someone always sitting down? Are they, you can tell a lot from how people look. And handy at the back of this book, we have some pages for your very own notes for you to keep, so you have them close to hand. So I want to be clear that Sharon is an OBGYN who practiced for 30 years in DC and is a renowned national expert on menopause and perimenopause and reproductive health. And she has a lot to say about that in everything that she does, including this book, where we have a chapter on perimenopause, which is the thing that happens in the run up to menopause and menopause itself. But there is a lot of other issues that she delves into, which affect women, can be from an early age. And I think we have this sense of perimenopause, menopause, oh, that's old lady
Right.
stuff. But
Mhm.
when we're talking about grown women, we're talking about women as they grow.
Right.
Tell us who the book is really for, Sharon.
Right. You know what? I honestly, and there's a reason why we didn't put menopause in the title,
Right.
and that's because menopause and perimenopause, they're just a couple of chapters. The entirety of the book really is designed to help you navigate everything from soup to nuts. So we start with how do you pick a doctor? We talk about the importance of knowing your history and your family history. How do you compile it? How do you become an effective advocate for yourself and for your family as you navigate this crazy Byzantine system we call patchwork, I would say, that we call medicine today? It's confusing. Um, it is not designed for efficiency for yours or even for medical people who work within it. So these are, so I also give you some little insider tips, things you may not know, but you should know to be able to navigate this. But when I talk about it, and that's why I said this, it's not all just menopause. It is about how to understand that you have way more power in this interaction now than ever before, because we don't live in a world where you're going to see one doctor for 25 or 30 years who knows you and knows your family history and who's delivered your children. That's not going to be anyone's lived experience. The nature of the doctor-patient relationship has changed. And so that means that the only constant is you. So if your doctor's not coming to save you, then who's going to save you? You do. But you need information to know how to navigate that system. And that was really the structure of the book. Um, I try to, even though we do talk about some pretty heavy things. We talk about cancer and heart disease and Alzheimer's. And I have a chapter called Female Troubles, which is everything from fibroids to hysterectomies to endometriosis. But if you think about it this way, about what my goal was with the book, it was everybody knows that book, What to Expect When You're
Mhm.
Expecting. This book is what to expect when you expect to live beyond 40. What are the things might I encounter? If I do, what do I do about them? So when you come in and you have your 5 to 7 minutes that you're going to get in front of your doctor, you are prepared. You are not spending time, looking for things. Oh, I don't know. What's the dose of that medication? You are in there and you are ready to get your needs addressed. And if you know that, then I think you're going to get a better outcome at the end of it, because we're not changing medicine, not in the near
Right,
future. Let's put it to you that way.
right.
Not in the near future. So the onus is really back on you, but somebody needs to tell you what you can and should do to be effective.
And, for those of you who are watching, we do have at the end of each chapter, Dr. Sharon's RX that gives you, bulleted tips on what the key takeaways and how you should prepare yourself. I want to talk about a couple of the topics that we did address in the book
Mhm.
because I found them really revealing and something that people don't think about with regard to women's health. Uh, brain health and heart health.
Mhm.
And I was shocked that women um, actually women suffer from Alzheimer's more than men. Um, and as we know, heart disease is a bigger killer of women than breast cancer. But we are all very hip to being prepared for breast cancer, and heart health is something that we don't really think about in the same way for women. We have this sort of stereotypical image of a sort of overweight, middle-aged guy who keels over with a heart attack. But tell us about women's health in this space, heart disease and brain health.
Okay. Women, again, we don't associate heart disease with women. We talk about it a little bit during February, during Women's, Heart Health Month. But women only have half the risk of heart disease as men until menopause. Then after you reach menopause, after 10 years, the rate of heart disease and heart attacks in women is equal to that or exceeds that of men. More women are likely to die of their first heart attack than men. Well, you say, well, why don't we know that? If we're at this much risk, I just assumed it was somebody else and that didn't really have anything to do with me. Or we assumed that heart disease And even the when you survive a heart attack, that chronic congestive heart failure that you see in older people, you think that's an inevitable consequence. And I'm here to say, no, it's not. We don't pay attention to it, which is why it continues to sort of percolate out here in the atmosphere. But the reality is, for most women, I want you to know that heart disease, not for most women, all women, is still the number one killer in the United States and around the world. But for women, you are going at every decade of your life, starting at age 30, more anywhere from 2 to 7 times more women will die of heart disease than die of breast cancer. And why are we not aware of that? So these are figures and things I want you to think about, because I think it will help change behavior if you knew that. And even when we talk about things like Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's is not, again, an inevitability. Um, the brilliant Dr. Lisa Mosconi has just written a book called The Menopause Brain, and she talks about how your brain is affected during the menopausal transition and beyond. 2/3 of the people in this country who have Alzheimer's are women,
That's
Black
shock-
women.
I was
Yes,
shocked by that figure.
Black women are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's as white women. Why don't we know that? And I think the bigger question is, okay, we know it. What are we doing about it?
Hmm.
Well, again, there's a lot more research that needs to be done. Thank goodness we have, brilliant researchers who are out there who are finally asking the question so we can get some answers. But, I think it's just not enough that we look at things and say, okay, well, it is. Okay, well, what are we doing? And I think that the first step is awareness, because I think that women have to start advocating, not just individually, but collectively. Because if you knew all these things, we're half the population. Why aren't we getting our just desserts when it comes to research, and really, answers about what's happening to our health? And we're finally going to turn that corner. I think we may or may not be able to see it in our lifetimes, Madalika, but at least there's the awareness now. And while we're waiting on those big answers to the big questions, then the things that I tell you, and will explain to you in the book, are the things you can do today, now, not 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that will decrease your risk, not only of heart disease, but of Alzheimer's as well.
And you brought up the issue of research, and I want to talk about that for a minute, because
Mm-hmm.
we don't know a lot of things, because women's health has not really been prioritized in research. And I wrote down 2 words as I was thinking about this: erectile dysfunction.
Yes.
I used to be a journalist before I came into publishing, and I very well remember when Viagra was launched and everybody covered it. And I thought to myself, man, we are talking about something that affects men, and we say the words erectile dysfunction in ads, on TV. Somebody worked on this. Drugs were created to meet a need. Somebody thought it was worth researching. And you alluded to this before. With all aspects of women's health, it's sort of like, oh, the women's stuff.
Yeah.
We call
Yeah.
it the women's stuff. And I want to talk to you about research, because that is really a major part of why what we know, we don't know as much as we may know with men, and that we may not have enough research to figure out why some outcomes are worse than others. So could you just talk about a bit about the state of research for women's health, as we think about everything that affects us as women?
Well, let me tell you, traditionally, and I say for traditionally, which means forever, um, women, women weren't even included in clinical trials. It wasn't until 1993 that it was mandated that women be included in clinical trials. Most of the medications that we take as women have been tested on men. And the assumption was, well, if it works on men, it must work the same way on women. It doesn't. We have different physiology, our hormones are different, and we can no longer accept just take my word for it. This works for men, it'll work for you. And we have several medications now that have been taken back where we realize they don't work the same as women. You remember the recommendation that everybody take an aspirin, a baby aspirin a day to prevent heart attacks? Doesn't work for women. Statins, which are prescribed like candy, don't work the same as in women as in men. So we have got to have gender specific research because that's the only way we're going to get some answers to some of the questions that we have, and to really answer questions about conditions that we have known forever. Why do more women have depression? Why do more women have anxiety? Why do women have migraines? Why do women have more autoimmune diseases? There is clearly something about being female that changes how we react, either internally or even with our environments. And someone has got to find that interesting. But let me say that requires a diverse group of researchers,
Right.
because I think if you have 100% of men asking and answering the questions, I think you can tell where that direction is going to go. But we also need women to demand it, because again, I think it's just been an awareness problem, and that we accept things as they are. And and you've heard me say this, Madalika, we as women sort of have incorporated the language of suffering into our existence.
Absolutely.
Of course, it's just part of being a woman. You suffer from cramps, you suffer with childbirth, with bad relationships, with migraines, any number of things. And the expectation is that we suffer through it. And I'm like, no, that should not be our expectation. Our expectation really should be to feel well and be well. So let's get to it and figure out how we're going to make that
Well,
happen.
I think that that's something that is the theme throughout your book. I started off our conversation by saying the healthcare system is broken. Um, we can't sit around waiting for people to do the huge overhaul that it clearly needs, but we can do a little more for ourselves if we are armed with knowledge. Knowledge is power. Um, and with some confidence, I think. And I think that's tough too. I think women are, I think there's a sense that, oh, well, the doctor knows. The doctor knows because they had this amazing education, and then I reached some point at an age where I thought, wait, I also had an amazing education. It wasn't medical school, but also this doctor is the same age as me, right? I think we're sort of equals, but it is an intimidating system. And as you say, we don't have relationships with our medical professionals that might have happened a long time ago and are certainly not coming back. So how do we talk a bit about how we can do that? And for those of you who've joined us, I will say during the course of this editing this book with Sharon, I found myself in a lot of situations in the doctor's office where Sharon was like the Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder. And I'd be like, oh, at this point, I should really, Sharon would say, well, have you asked about this? Have you, quizzed them on that? And that was just so helpful to me for really utilizing the time I had with the doctor effectively. So talk about that some, because I know that was your mission for this book.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share a secret. Doctors don't know everything. They don't. And no one is a better expert on you than you. You've lived in this body. So if you say this hurts or I have a problem here, you can't let someone tell you, no, you don't. You know. Um, and I say, but here's the thing, any doctor worth his or her salt loves an engaged, informed patient. If a doctor is irritated because you ask a question, then you have to say, well, there's a problem here. But let me say this, there's a difference between data and information. And I can say from the doctor point of view, it is slightly irritating when someone has just Googled something and you just get a bunch of random facts that don't have anything to do with anything. And then you come in and you say, well, what if I have acute intermittent porphyria? And I'm like, okay, you probably don't. All right, you don't even know what that is. But having a framework of being able to understand, oh, okay, and that I see what these symptoms may be leading to. An educated, informed patient is my best ally. You know, I love that. I was never in the job of telling people what to do. My job was to engage you and to say to you, help me help you. That should be the relationship between doctors and patients, not anybody dictating what you can and cannot do or what you can and cannot have. You
Right.
know, because I think this is the other very important point is that I think that women should be given the same level of agency as men. And I think that when we have good information, and we come in, we are informed, we know what our particular circumstances are and what our treatment goals in. That's ideal. I mean, that's how we're going to get to the outcome that we both want. And trust me, nobody wants you to do better than your doctor, honestly. At the end of the day, they may not seem like, but they really want you to do well, even if it's nothing but more than ego gratifying. We all want the same thing. And so I say, help your doctor take better care of you. And that's going to require a little bit of homework and a little bit of effort on your part, but I promise you, you can do it.
Yeah, but don't be guided by Dr. Google.
No, don't just come in there saying, you know, well, here are the 12 things that it could be. Probably not. Don't do that.
Um, there's so much good advice in here, and it's in such a accessible style, which is what I also love about it. It is your sister friend who happens to be a doctor, and pity the sister friend who's the only doctor in the group because she has to be everybody's doctor. And that's a bit of your story, isn't it, Sharon?
Yeah. It is, but you know, and this is where if I had a superpower, and I don't, but if I did, um, it would be I have a certain understanding because I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. I'm not just writing this as a doctor giving medical advice. I'm sharing, and I'm sharing with you my family stories, my story, such that you understand that I get it. I totally get where you are and where you're coming from. I was a normal person for, you know, a lot longer than I was a doctor. And I know how to speak to people without speaking down to them. And I think that sometimes when doctors talk, we get a little enamored with ourselves and we say a lot of things, and you sound so smart, and you are, but you're only smart if the information that you're trying to convey is
Mhm.
understood. And if you can't do that in a way that the person who's sitting across the table from you understands, then you might as well be talking gibberish.
And, I think that when you act upon these, this guidance that Sharon gives you, it can be acting upon something small or even
Right.
something like makes you feel better. I want to end. We are just hitting our time, Sharon, but I want to end with a phrase that comes up in the book that I don't think many people are familiar with. We are all familiar with lifespan. Uh, Sadly, Americans' lifespan is reducing in the last few years, which is very troublesome. But you address something called health span, and that is what you are trying to address in this book. Tell us what you mean by health span.
Just lifespan or longevity is just how long you live. I want you to help. When I say your health span, this is how long you live healthfully. I want those two numbers to be really kind of close together. You know, that you are healthy until you're not, and then you're gone. That's the goal. Not to just live. I mean, the one thing that we do very well with modern medicine is that we can extend life for a very long time, but it's not necessarily quality life. I want to focus on health span because I want you to have a long and healthy and functional life. That's our goal.
And I think that is a great way to end, because I think some of us, when we see people who spend their last years sort of not very mobile in a nursing home, not eating well, just not living their last years of their life to the fullest, that's a wake up call for all of us, that we need to think about our health all the way through. Sharon, thank you so much for this book. I think everyone who reads it will see a little bit of themselves in the real life examples that you talk about, and will also really hang on to the knowledge that you are conveying in the way that you do, with just love and generosity and accessibility. And God knows this is a time in our lives where we need someone talking with us, not at us, especially in the medical profession. So the book is Grown Women Talk. You can buy it, order it today. It's out tomorrow. Dr. Sharon Malone, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madalika.